Hello, everybody out there. Welcome to Take the Black Live, the one, the only, still the reigning internet chat show where we talk about all things sci-fi, fantasy, movies, TV, space lasers, robots, swords, horses, and maybe even a Pegasus. My name is Dan Selcke, and I am the editor of winnerscoming.net. I'm here with Daniel Roman, who is also the editor of winnerscoming.net. We edit the site together. Daniel, how's that working out for you?
It's true. It's working out well from where I'm sitting. It seems like a synchronous good time. So, yeah. How are you, Dan?
Nice.
How are all of you out there?
Yeah. Hello, Andrew. Good to see you. My cat is not in the room. She wasn't here earlier, so I don't think she'll be joining us today unless I open the door later. Do not tell stories about your cat, Dan. That is not good content. Oh, whatever. She'll like paw at the door sometimes to be let in. So if she does that, maybe you'll see her. I hear the dog. Okay. But
Yeah.
before I start talking about my pets, Daniel, and derail before we even begin,
the pet show.
What's on the agenda for today? What are we discussing?
Well, we are going to be talking about, I guess, just a lot of not pet related things. So we have some news. George R. R. Martin recently I don't even want to say broke his silence. He said some stuff about the Winds of Winter, and anytime George R. R. Martin says some stuff about the Winds of Winter, we're gonna talk about it. And notably, he said some stuff this time that made me a little sad. So we're gonna discuss that. We have some exciting news from HBO about their Dunk and Egg show.
Everything's pretty cool show, yeah.
Of the Seven Kingdoms, the Hedge Knight, the show of long and unwieldy titles. So yeah, we're going to talk about those things, and then the usual: what we're watching, what we're reading, what we're doing with our lives.
I would say of a little other kind of preview, just to give it kind of give it some scope. I wonder if we'll talk about what authors owe their fan bases in the general sense,
yes.
and try to extract some general philosophical principles out of this discussion. We are an important podcast for important people, talk about important things. And that's why we're going to begin by discussing what the 72-year-old author who wears a little delivery boy cap said.
Yeah, so a little bit of context. Basically, George R. R. Martin recently, I believe it was last week, or maybe over the weekend, did
the weekend before,
Yeah, he did an author-on-author discussion with Shadowhunters author Cassandra Clare. And basically, the quote that made the rounds from this is that he said, "I've been working, I'm 12 years late with the Winds of Winter, as we know. I'm just going to put it right out there. You guys don't need to pester me about it." And yeah, I think that's pretty damn fair. You don't need to pester him about it. What do you think, Dan? Do we need to pester him? Do we want to weigh in on this? Then I'll hit the larger takeaway from it.
Sure. Well, I also like that, like Cassandra Clare was saying that her new book, which I forget the name of, will be out in like March of 2025. And he was like,
King.
Which is a fun little title. It's hard to get good fancy titles. And he was like, the sad thing is that still might beat the Winds of Winter. Ha ha ha.
Yeah.
Which also implies it might not beat the Winds of Winter, so it might come before March 2025. But he's been saying that for ages.
It didn't sound optimistic. Yeah,
it's optimistic. He always sounds in good humor about it, which I really always like.
Yeah.
Like, maybe I'm jumping too far ahead, but whenever Martin talks about the Winds of Winter, never. Okay. So in this future. Whenever Martin talks about the Winds of Winter, he always says these kind of things. He always says, in this case, like, well, it still might not be out by May of 2025. I know I'm late, guys. You're all the pester me. But I always have faith that it's coming along because he's making public appearances. He's talking about it openly. Yep. He's, announcing on his blog that he's written this chapter or that chapter, wrapped up that viewpoint character. He's talking about how he's making TV shows. He's buying railroads. He's managing businesses. He's running theaters, running bookstores. He seems so active and sort of well-adjusted that even if I am upset by how slowly it's coming, I've never really lost faith that it's coming, which is a bit of a contrast maybe to someone else we'll talk about.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think so. In regards to the pestering thing, I can totally see where he's coming from,
I
because
mean, people are going to pester him.
I get that. We get that even just writing about Martin, that anytime anyone says anything about the man, it is inevitable that there will be comments of where's the book? Where's the book? I lost
Where the
faith,
book at?
blah, blah, blah. I do kind of agree with you that there was we'll say a Dark Night of the Soul period around the end of Game of Thrones where he wasn't talking about the Winds of Winter for a
Sure.
solid couple of years. And that was probably the most worried I was, because like I've been following Martin on his blog since Jesus 2005, I want to say, like the year that A Feast for Crows came out. So when he's uncharacteristically silent, it's more worrying than when he's
Creepy.
giving these
You
updates.
worry. Yeah.
You worry. And in this case, I was a little dispirited with the, it's not coming. It might still not be out by 2025 March, but at the same time, it's like at this point we've all waited like 12 years. Like, what's another year? Take your time and get it
Kind
right.
of.
Kind of. So yeah, I do think it's an interesting question though. Like, do authors owe their readers books in series that they've started?
And Andrew Haley was born in 2005. He's been alive longer.
Man, Andrew, I have been waiting for new books from George R. R. Martin longer than you have been alive. That puts it into perspective. But at the same time, so you brought up a good point about Martin. It's the question we kind of wanted to grapple with a little bit is, do authors owe us books in long-awaited series like this? And the reason that it's kind of worth discussing this week is because a different author with a long-awaited book series sequel also made headlines. Patrick Rothfuss, the author of The Kingkiller Chronicle, so that's two books, The Name of the Wind and The Wise Man's Fear. He had kind of a whole snafu like a year and a half ago where he promised he'd release a chapter from his third book, The Doors of Stone. He used that as an incentive for charity, and then he never released it. And that has kind of dragged on now. And it is a bad look. It's now a year and a half later. And basically I think it was last week, he kind of broke his silence. We can say that for this because it's true.
Sure.
Like he had pointedly not really talked about this for months and months and months. And he basically said, I don't have the full quote in front of me, but he had tried to make it a bigger project. He called in a bunch of favors for voice actors rather than just like barfing it up onto his blog, which like weird, but okay. Kind of, discussed how he had started editing this chapter and now he doesn't know whether he finishes editing it and all this. And basically now it's a year and a half later and people donated to this thing and he didn't deliver. And that is to me, a much bigger deal than just an author taking their time on a book. So yeah, what do you think about this, Dan? Do you think what are your thoughts? Do you think authors owe us books? Do you think they should take all the time they need? What are your thoughts?
I think it's a multifaceted question, Daniel.
Yeah, it is.
First of all, I want to say, so this is on the edge of bad taste, right? Because I'm going to be analyzing. I'm going to be
like us talking about this.
What I'm going to say. I can't speak for you.
Well, you're giving
because
the
basically,
disclaimer.
I am disclaiming. It's very important.
Okay.
Because basically, I'm like psychoanalyzing two people I've never met. I look at George R. R. Martin
always
and
healthy.
I see always healthy, and I see someone who's industrious. And I see someone who's putting a lot of work out there, and who has done work. Like he's put out books since Dance the Dragon. It's just not the book everyone wants to read.
Oh yeah,
like he's written episodes of TV. He's done all this. He owns all these businesses. He seems busy and he seems healthy, and that's why I've never really worried about the Winds of Winter. Like I want it, but like you said, it's been 12 years. Whatever. It seems like it's coming along. Fine. Yeah. You look at a guy like Patrick Rothfuss, and I don't get that sense. I get a sense of there's some kind of cloud hanging over his life. Like I don't know him personally, obviously. I don't know what he's dealing with. I know there have been like allusions to some, personal problems.
He said he's had some personal stuff.
Yeah. But like in that case, when like he promised one chapter for charity and you can't produce that in years and years after people give up money for it, yeah, it does not give off the same aura of I'm more or less in a good place for just taking a long time with this book vibe that I get
Yes,
from Martin. Now, so
I
far
agree.
as do authors owe fans books, the answer is no, I don't think they do. But
Same.
there's a bit of a nuance there. So, are you aware of, like, I think it was 2020, the
Mhm.
editor of Patrick Rothfuss's editor, Betsy
Betsy
Wollheim,
Walholm.
went on,
Walheim.
well, what,
Yeah.
I don't know, man, went on Facebook and put a comment that she since deleted,
Hmm.
basically saying that she hadn't seen really anything from the Doors of Stone, and basically saying, I'm going to paraphrase, that no, authors don't owe fans books. Authors might owe publishers books because they sign
Definitely.
contracts, and
Yeah.
publishing companies are not, it's not like it's an investment bank or a giant tech firm. They're not incredibly lucrative. They depend on big sellers to get them by.
Yes.
So
Very much so.
maybe you don't owe it to the fans, but maybe you do owe it to your contractually obligated companies that you sign with. And so that is a wrinkle. I think it's worth putting out there.
Yeah.
And I mean, I hope Patrick Rothfuss is okay, but that's where I stand on the kind of, why does the wait for the Winds of Winter feel different than the wait for the Doors of Stone? And to me, it's because of the vibes. I get good vibes from Martin, and I get sort of rough vibes from Patrick Rothfuss.
Yeah, and I think so that is a very good point about the publisher. If so anyone listening, if you are interested about this, I did a very deep dive into specifically the
Yes, you
situation with
did.
Patrick Rothfuss and his publisher. You can find on winterscoming.net. I think it's Will We Ever See the Doors of Stone? It's complicated because it is.
It is
Because,
complicated.
his publisher, Daw Books,
So,
was
Mr. Pucker.
an independent publisher, so they distributed through a very large one, but they were still independently owned, and they did have, they were relying on him as a big seller, and that was kind of like shockingly transparent to see an editor come out and say things like that. So it is
Yes,
definitely a
and I believe it was
question of
deleted,
how it
the
affected
comment,
them.
because
It was. I quoted those comments in the article I
mhm,
just referenced, and I had to like dig them up. I think on Reddit, I found an archive of
God
them.
bless Reddit. Yeah.
Yeah, God bless Reddit for this sort of stuff. And yeah, it's hard. You have to emphasize the difference in these two situations. So on the one hand, like Patrick Rothfuss, this is his first book series, and there is a little bit of a feeling of kind of like always promising and then not delivering, and maybe that has affected him in a negative way, in personal ways. He's talked about it a little bit, stayed a little, not quite as transparent as someone like Scott Lynch, who wrote The Lies of Locke Lamora, who's a similar long-awaited situation, but he's been very, very transparent with his fans about like depression and having
Mm.
issues showing people what he's working on. Um, but Rothfuss with stuff like this, the charity chapter thing, it's like that's a single chapter. Like we're talking like anywhere from 10 to maybe 30 pages over a year and a
Mhm.
half that you're like agonizing over editing for
I don't.
something
I
donated like six
You don't buy
figures
it,
for.
right? It it
it
it it, it doesn't pass the smell test. It doesn't
it
pass the common sense test.
it is there is definitely something more than just the writing going on there that is stopping it. And I don't want to psychoanalyze, like I don't know his situation well enough. But so
Yeah,
you
leave that to
have
me.
that, and okay. Um that the hard thing is like I saw a calendar he's doing that's like donate to charity and get this calendar of Bast for his new novella that's coming out, which is a remake of an old novella he released. So it's a new version of that with like 100 new pages. And I kind of like, I got a weird feeling in my stomach when I saw the buy this calendar and donate to charity, because it's like, I don't know, man. Like the last time you did a donate to charity thing, it's now become like a relatively large controversy in this narrow
In this
niche
space,
field,
sure.
in this space. Um, on the flip side of this, so Martin, so we had an article talking about what Rothfuss said about his chapter and whatever. And that made its way to Reddit on the r/books subreddit. There was a comment on there I thought was so on point about Martin and the difference here, because Martin is the opposite end of the spectrum. Rothfuss is doing this stuff at the beginning of his career with his first series. Martin, it's like he's in his sunset years. He's in his 70s when most people are retired. Even if he lives another 20 years, it's still like, like the sunset years of his life.
Retired at 72, not in this economy. Okay, sorry, go on.
Yeah, totally. So this comment from you/Jade Rust, I thought was really succinctly put this. I've since moved, but I used to be in Albuquerque and saw GRRM fairly regularly at local cons since he lives in Santa Fe. From attending some of those talks, I can tell you that the man is busy. He owns a literal railroad. He's a producer on multiple TV shows and is working on getting some of the books he used to love back into publication. So that's not his books even, just other books he thinks are worthy of readers. He's a producer of his own film company that's making and sending short films to various festivals. He's one of the major investors behind Meow Wolf, which is an art installation that you can walk through that is very cool. And apparently helps write the backstories for all the Meow Wolf locations. He owns a bookshop. He's writing other stuff and backstory to help him get the GOT series together. I assume that's the spinoffs for HBO. He's really involved in the art scene in Santa Fe and helping with programs to support young artists. The man has a lot of spinning plates going. I didn't realize how much until I attended a talk where he was going on about his various projects, and I realized that he could spend the rest of his life working on things that are not Game of Thrones related and never skip a day of work. And that's just so on point for this guy. It's not he's slacking. It's not there's some thing that's preventing him. Like, you don't realize until like this person said they went to Albuquerque or they lived in Albuquerque. I visited Santa Fe once, and like in a local restaurant, they're like, what's going on around Santa Fe, like local magazine they have. Sure. It was George R.R. Martin on the cover and talking about like not Game of Thrones, but like all the philanthropist work he does in the area and why it's so important for the area. It's just a night and day difference. And yeah, it gets a lot more grace from me. So what are your thoughts about this? Because I just rambled a whole bunch.
I think I share them like really well. I do want to say that I want to have a disclaimer of this is all alleged. We neither confirm nor deny that we have no inside information. This is all opinion, not legally actionable.
True.
We cannot be sued over this because it's just all of our impressions. We send nothing but good feelings and good vibes out to both of these people.
Yeah. I want to read both of these
because we do, of course.
I mean, I want to read The Winds of Winter. I will read The Doors of Stone, but I'm a little overweighting for it personally.
Speaking of that, I did like Nicole's comment, which is a big one, saying that from a business marketing standpoint, the longer I assume Martin, takes, the less people will be interested or remember about The Winds of Winter. Of course, the hardcore fans will care, but the general public has largely moved on. I honestly don't know if I agree with that. I mean, I agree that he should have released it in a year or two of the show's ending for the best sales. But honestly, I don't. If that book comes out, I think people are still invested enough in this whole thing that it will be a big deal. It'll be like a big book launch. It'll be very big. I don't think people have moved on as much as, I don't know, as much as, I don't know, that they've moved on from the Hunger Games or some other thing. I really think it'll be a huge deal when it comes out, if it comes out.
Sure.
And I do think it'll come out. Rick has a very long comment. Let's talking about Daniel Abraham, one half of the writing duo that writes The Expanse with Corey. It's true, was George R. R. Martin's assistant and lore research for A Song of Ice and Fire for years until he dedicated himself to collaborating on The Expanse books. Rick is convinced that Martin cannot figure out how to wrap A Song of Ice and Fire, and that Abraham was perhaps the determinative factor in keeping him in the narrative productive and moving forward in some coherent fashion. Interesting. Martin has indulged a sprawling and undisciplined tale at this point. I agree that he has definitely sprawled out, probably too much. That he has essentially created the heat death of Ice and Fire. Ooh, this is fire stuff. The universe he has given life to is expanded and the story diluted to the point where it can no longer be collared and its myriad characters' arcs tied up, certainly not without keeping him focused and disciplined, without someone keeping focused and disciplined. He has moved on to all sorts of other pursuits because he cannot figure out how to actually finish Song of Ice and Fire. Losing Abraham was the difference between plotting productivity and deer in the headlights moribundity. That being said, Martin owes no one anything. It's his creation. Ooh, it's a good ass comment. I definitely agree that it spilled over and it got really, really sprawling. I'm not prepared to theorize about whether Abraham leaving was a determinant factor.
Same.
I think it's pretty clear that between A Storm of Swords and A Feast for Crows, the story did become less disciplined. It did become less tight. It did become more sprawling. I think that can be reined in. Like he said, all you got to do is kill off some characters and focus the story again and get them all in the same area. And suddenly you're not covering like 18,000 people on corners of the world. It can be done.
And that is what this book needs to do.
Yeah. My read was always that his editor stopped telling him no after the sales got bigger. That maybe there are people like who aren't, because clearly he isn't willing to make like harsh cuts. I think his editor should lean on him more for that. But this is all speculation. I don't know what's going on. Yeah. I do think it'll come out, and I'm looking forward to it. And it'll probably be more like the last two books, a little more just all the details all the time, where like I'll bet my editor brain will want to edit The Winds of Winter. I'll put it that way. When it comes out, I'll bet. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
But I still think it's a little juice within it. I don't think he doesn't know how to wrap things up.
I agree with that. I think when you take the long look at Martin's career too, like he's written a lot of stories. He's written many books. Like he knows how to end a book. But this is a long, sprawling series. You are right, Rick. And that has kind of been the name of the game, not from the middle of the series, but since the start. Like he pitched this as a trilogy, and then the first book became 3 books. Like, so I'm not prepared to speculate on the Daniel Abraham thing either. I think it's probably a little more complicated than that. But at the same time, I do agree, one, that he doesn't owe anyone anything. Again, this is, if he finishes it,
maybe his publisher.
Lifetime, it may, well, definitely his publisher, because there are contracts and things. Although it is worth noting, I think Martin has probably fulfilled things to his publisher relatively well.
You're probably right.
But like, they're making bank off of all of the other ways he has found to monetize A Song of Ice and Fire. And like, let's keep in mind, his publisher told him to set aside The Winds of Winter to write Fire and Blood, because he was really moving on that. So there's clearly some communication there. And they clearly have his editors are not posting shit about him on social media.
They're making money. They are making money off George R. R. Martin.
And Daw does still make money on Patrick Rothfuss too.
Sure, of course.
The Name of the Wind and The Wise Man's Fear do still sell. They have a new novella coming out actually next month that we mentioned earlier, The Narrow Road Between Desires. So yeah, I think what Joe said, at this point, I think the national media will cover The Winds of Winter if it gets released. Like, probably. I don't see why they wouldn't. It is going to be a big deal when it gets released. That's the thing with like everyone gave up on it. It's like, sure, Jan.
It's going to be written up in like the New York Times. Everywhere's going to write about it.
It may be that like, some fans are angry and bitter, and like, we should probably stop.
There'll be jokes.
Checking his
there'll
blog
be memes
for
too.
Updates on it. Yeah, like if you're gonna wait with bated breath for a series, there are probably healthier ways to do that than these two that we're talking about. But like, people are gonna read these books if and whenever they come out, and I think it's a whenever, especially for Martin, but maybe generally too.
Julie says that she's given up on it, but if it happens, I reserve her to change my mind, which I think is a great perspective. Yeah,
I agree. There are so many good books published every single year. Like, you don't really need to just wait for A Song of Ice and Fire. If you like, go read Malazan. There's like 10 of those. They're great.
Or The First Law by Joe Abercrombie. I also love Rick's other comment, which just comparing George R. R. Martin to Tom Clancy, Clancy was infamous for depicting 10 chapters out of 70 to the life cycle of a tree that was seeded, sprouted, chopped down, milled, loaded on a truck, lashed to a ship overboard in a storm, and finally fouled the propeller of a submarine just to force a single momentary plot point. Criminy.
That sounds deep.
Tom Clancy, the Rainbow Six guy, did that? I didn't know that.
Deep. I didn't either. I don't really read Clancy.
I read one Tom Clancy book when I was younger and I didn't like it. I didn't go back. I didn't know what book is that? What spy thriller does that happen in? Pretty cool.
Yeah, I wanted to see. You just sold us on it, Rick. That's why the editor didn't take it out. Like, I've never seen that before. I want to know more.
I haven't thought of Tom Clancy in years, and now I'm a little intrigued as to who did in that book.
Now I'm not going to be able to stop thinking about Tom Clancy.
I'm going to Google Tom Clancy, the Tree book, and see what comes up.
But yeah, so that's. I was just going to say that's more or less the gist of what's going on with George R. R. Martin, with Patrick Rothfuss, and generally wish them both well. Hope that they, are both in good places and are doing work that they enjoy and are feeling good about. But yeah, if you are tired of waiting, maybe go pick up another book because there are lots of them from authors.
Or learn how to do skateboard tricks. There are things you can do with your time.
Or learn to do skateboard tricks.
For you, Julie.
Nice. It was the sum of all fears, says Rick. Noted. Now we need to know.
That's a famous one. It has a tree. I didn't know it had 10 chapters of tree life. I'm gonna have to look it up. All right.
Shall we move on?
Let's move on.
Okay.
Speaking of Song of Ice and Fire TV, what's happening in that realm?
The other big Westeros news that broke in the past week is that at Westeroses on Twitter or X, whatever. I'll never call it X. Sorry, Elon, but also not sorry, Elon. Why are you breaking my favorite social media site?
I feel like they are really slow to adopt the new name. Eventually things turn over when like it's a rebranding, but this one, Twitter, it seems to be sticking around. But that's really neither here nor there.
Yep. So anyway, this Song of Ice and Fire fan account on Twitter noticed that UK casting director Lucy Bevan, who is working on A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, the Hedge Knight, put out a casting call, and that casting call sounds a lot like the descriptions for Dunk and Egg. So the two descriptions, there's a boy aged 9 to 10, physically small. The character is wise beyond his years, confident and witty. He has a neutral English accent. It's Egg. And is white with blue/green eyes and pale skin. Must be under 4'6" and at least 9 years old by March 2024 for licensing. Yes, Dan.
Don't boys who are 9 years old and under 4'6" grow to be taller than 4'6"? See Isaac Hebstead Wright, who is like 8 feet tall.
They've only got to be 4'6" for season 1. Then they can grow.
Yeah, that's true.
Time jumps in Dunk and Egg.
That's true.
Good point. I guess we should mention this for. I assume if you're watching this podcast, you probably know what Dunk and Egg is. But Dunk and Egg are Martin's novellas. It's about Sir Duncan the Tall, a knight, and his squire Egg. They travel around Westeros on adventures. They're a little, they're shorter. They're charming. The three that he's put out are in a book called A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. But yeah, the other description is for a soldier aged 18 to 25. The soldier is very tall and physically strong. He has a humble disposition and is perceptive and thoughtful. Any ethnicity must be at least 6'4". I love that we've got some height inversions there. We need a 4'6" Egg. We need a 6'4" Dunk. What do you think, Dan? Is this what we're looking at? Is Dunk and Egg?
Oh yeah, it is. I mean, my big thing here is that I think they said it was going to like film in 2024, which I think is faster than most of us assume that a Knight of the Seven Kingdoms show would be going into production. Because Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, this kind of novella, like you said, George R. R. Martin, set between House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones, lighter in tone. I mean, we've always thought it would be a good spinoff. I just go into worry mode whenever I see them. I love that Game of Thrones is like the classy cinematic universe where it doesn't have too much going on. It's not like Marvel and Star Wars fire hoses of content. It's like every once in a
So
while
glad.
we come on, slap you with something great, and then rest for a bit. I hope that continues. Then again, if the show is good, like a reality where House of the Dragon airs a season 1 year and then Dunk and Egg the next year and then flips back, would be pretty great.
Yeah.
But we'll see what happens. I just hope they give it the time they need, because for a while the
Same.
writer's strike was on, and they couldn't work on it. Now that's over. Now the actor strike is still on, but I'm guessing the actor strike wouldn't apply because everyone will be English, and as we know, England hates workers, is what we've learned
Apparently.
during the writer's strike. They have like no labor protections for strikes, so you can go ahead and hire them all you want. I just hope, because obviously the source material is good enough to make a great show,
It
and
is.
the track record is good enough to make a great show. I hope it turns out to be a great show. I hope they don't rush it. Um, Tom Hopper would make a great Dunk, but we'll see if that happens. He's
Tom
older than
Hopper.
what they're asking, but
Yep,
whatever.
that's
He looks
yeah, that's
fine.
the Umbrella Academy, right? That's the guy
Yeah,
yeah, he's always been my
tall.
dream cast. I would have, if they had done Dunk and Egg years ago, he would have been the one where I was like, please just cast Tom Hopper. Now I kind of hope they get unknowns for Dunk and Egg, honestly, and they can fill out all of
Sure.
the parts around them, which a lot of them kind of come and go through the series. Like Dunk and Egg are really the only two like real on-screen
Yeah.
recurring characters in those novellas. So they can get
Just
like,
appealing for a TV show.
yeah, they can get like really big names to fill out those secondary roles, and they just come on for a season, have a banger role, and then leave, and it's really memorable.
Julia Louis-Dreyfus is Tanya Targaryen. Yeah, that'd be fun.
Boom, I'd watch it. Who said? Julie said, hasn't George R. R. Martin said he is going to do more Dunk and Egg stories too?
He said a lot of things.
Oh God, yeah. So when the news first broke that they were doing this show, I was like, oh, this is great. He's talked about wanting to do more. Now they can do them as this show if he doesn't have time to write them. And then like the next day, he was like, I still have 8 or 10 or 12 more of them I want to write. And I was like, George, you're not making this easy for me. But yeah, so he does want to do more. I think Dunk and Egg is kind of uniquely positioned where even if they ran out of source material, they could probably still make a pretty good show because they're such like self-contained stories. It's not the Song of Ice and Fire issue where it's how do we wrap up, these myriad plot lines like Rick mentioned, and we need to figure that out when George R. R. Martin hasn't even figured it out. This is just like he hasn't prioritized Dunk and Egg over Winds of Winter. That's why we don't have more of them, which is the right call to me.
Or maybe not prioritized them over, like we said, Meow Wolf or his Railroad or Wild Cards or all the other stuff he does. That's the issue with that one.
Those are all different things. I do think it's important to note that like George R. R. Martin doing things like producing shows or working on his businesses
is a personal attack on me.
Is a personal attack on you, and it's also using different like mental muscles versus like writing a different book instead of the book he should be right. Like that is a very that's a similar, it's easy to see the takeaway there, and he's explicitly said he can't write more Dunk and Egg until he finishes the Winds of Winter. So like that is the reason. I'm not even speculating.
No, yeah, I know. He said that like because of a train metaphor, much like a train, he's on one track and must transfer to the other. He's not like, someone mentioned Stephen King back there. Stephen King, who does some cocaine and then can like write short stories, books, and anything else he wants all the time. Not anymore. True. He still writes a lot.
We can say Brandon Sanderson though, because Sanderson,
yes, we can.
He has specifically talked about how he likes to switch projects between what he's working on. That's the whole reason he didn't just write the first 5 Stormlight Archive books back to back. It helps rejuvenate him to write other smaller books in between them, and instead we have 20 Brandon Sanderson books. So
I'm so looking forward to reading a Brandon Sanderson book. I have like a couple pages to go in the 3-body problem, and then it's off to Sanderson land. I'm gonna ask you which one I should read because you are the expert I know.
I will give you some options because the nice thing about Sanderson is there are a lot of good on ramps into the Cosmere.
After the Wheel of Philip Plus asks, after the Winds of Winter is finished, should George R. R. Martin devote his energy to finishing the Dunk and Egg series or Dream of Spring? God, best case scenario, he takes, again, best case scenario, a couple months and writes a Dunk and Egg story, and then it's on to a Dream of Spring.
That's what I would
knowing
say
him, God, heaven knows how long it takes him to do stuff. But we'll see.
And again,
we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Yeah, and again, it's the I don't want to say it's the end of his life. Like, it's all relative, but he's in his 70s. Do you know what I mean though? Like, it's different than like I made the Sanderson comparison, but like Sanderson's in his 40s, like he's cruising through the middle of his career and he's already starting to think about I only have limited time. Martin, like Julie said, he has the right to do whatever he wants to do. But it makes it hard to follow him if fans don't trust him to finish stuff, which is a shame because he is a good writer. And I mean, that's all true.
People of a certain age, though, it's very different from person to person. Like every 30-year-old, you can assume, is probably capable of, like, you know, working a job, coming home, doing stuff at home. Like, there are 72-year-olds like Martin who seem to have the energy and verve and get-to-itiveness of a much younger person. And then there are 72-year-olds who are like walking death. And I don't know, I'm not sure prepared to say that like he's in the sunset of his years, because sometimes some people at that age are really, really active and are still chugging they're in their younger years. Some are not.
Sure. I'm not saying that as a comment on his health. I'm just saying it as I'm not. I'm not. George, I hope you're doing well. I'm saying it just as like the part of his career he's in. He has a bunch of work behind him at this point. And the stuff he has ahead of him are like, what parts of his basically magnum opus, Westeros, can he get finished in the years he has? And I am all in favor of, like, I'll read anything he writes whenever he writes it. So, but yeah.
Sorry, I didn't want to impugn and project that you have some kind of problem with the elderly. So I'll say right now, Daniel Roman
clearing
is not bigoted against the elderly.
No, I am not.
And you know he's not, because why else would we have to clarify that he isn't? All right, what else talking about today, Daniel?
Did we have to clarify? So we're gonna move into, I think, the what are we watching / reading portion of the show. So all of you out there listening, what are you watching or reading? And Dan, I'm gonna kick it over to you. What media are you consuming in your life right now?
I've seen the finale of Our Flag Means Death that airs tomorrow. Ooh. It's not bad. It's not great either, and people don't talk about it. I predict this might be the last season, and I'll give you a little preview. Just don't tell anybody. It does kind of end. They could end it here, and it'd be fine. Which I think might happen. We'll see. I'm enjoying Loki on Disney Plus. I think this is one of the best Marvel series that's coming along in a while. I like that. I like how practical the sets look. That it adds so much, just like visual interest. That last episode with Jonathan Majors bringing in a big way, it actually felt like things were moving. Like in that Ahsoka show, I'm sorry, like it never felt like anything moved forward. And in this Loki show, I feel like there is movement. I can never trust Marvel, because they tend to have a reset it back to zero habit. But I'm enjoying that more than I have recent Marvel shows. That's nice. I saw Killers of the Flower Moon over the weekend.
Did you? How was it?
It was good. It's a 3.5 hour historical epic about a real event where Leonardo DiCaprio and Robert De Niro team up to kill rich Native Americans for their oil money. I mean, I don't think it needs to be this long. Like, if you want to make these like kind of smaller, intimate, like actor like driven movies, and you want people to see them, I almost want to say, like, lob 20 minutes off that and like just make it a little more palatable, and then you'll get more money, and then you'll be able to make more movies like this, because it's a serious movie. It's like it has a real topic. It's tackling something that's intense, and there's like discourse around it that's interesting. Like we can talk about how responsible is it with, and how it depicts the Native Americans community of the tribe that I forget the name of. Osage. There we go. Yeah. Like the performances are really like rounded and full, and it's just really, it's cool to watch, and it's kind of an old school, and I want them to make more movies like this, and I'm afraid they won't if no one goes to see this one, because it's 3.5 hours long. So that is one of my thoughts, but overall I enjoyed it.
Cool. Yeah, I have not seen it yet. I'm one of the rare oddballs. I love a long movie. Like I'll sit through a 3.5 hour movie without complaint. Like, I mean, that's just me, but I do understand what you're saying. I think that's really fair. I think it is interesting. The discourse has been very interesting about it. You know, a lot of people really talking up how much Martin Scorsese kind of relied on like the Osage tribal like knowledge center, basically, like in order to make this movie, and how wonderful that is. But also how interesting it is that like the movie centers Leonardo DiCaprio's character, the person committing the atrocities, instead of the people being having the atrocities committed against them. So it's interesting. I'm glad that it exists. I'm excited to see it, but I think you have a good point about your point that if it were shorter, maybe it would encourage more people to go see it. Is probably fair.
Nicole did just say that she wants to see it, but it's too long. Although Andrew loves long movies, and Andrew says the longer the better. That's what she said, which is a reference to a classic situation comedy from the 2000s, 2010s called The Office.
Oh, nice. Julie says she's watching Fear the Walking Dead. It's about the only thing that's interesting to me at the moment. Wish the Umbrella Academy would hurry up. Yeah, Umbrella Academy is coming back next year for its fourth and final season. We'll be watching it. So Loki, you make a good point about Loki, and I've been watching that too. And man, it's interesting because I'm having the most fun with Loki that I've had with a Marvel show in ages.
It's definitely the best in a while.
Definitely. And so much of that is like how much they just like made it a traditional show. Like the writing is very sharp with like Loki's using his powers in interesting ways. The back and forth banter, like they just kind of let Tom Hiddleston and Owen Wilson like make their magic.
They definitely have good chemistry, and the show lets the chemistry sort of be combustible.
Exactly. Yeah. The practical sets, man, I've noticed that in every episode. I've been like, this is why it bothers me that Disney has come to over rely on the volume so much, which is the 3D soundstage that's in everything, which is why like that final fight in Secret Invasion, like it's in a circular room because they're in the volume and it's a circle. With Emilia Clarke with a giant Schwarzenegger arm. Yeah, that was crazy. Yeah. So I am enjoying Loki. I think it's interesting because Marvel really does have like fan trust to win back right now. I think Loki is easily their best swing at starting that ball rolling. So I'm kind of rooting for it. Keep it up. Keep it up, Loki. Aside from that, I watched another episode of The Walking Dead, Daryl Dixon. So I'm getting caught up on that. I'm like halfway through the season. And that's great. The Walking Dead kind of surprising me with how good these spinoffs are.
Folk have liked it.
Yeah. Well, I think they're really like, they basically just took some of their best characters and were like, here, we're going to give you miniseries and just try to make them really good and interesting. And The Walking Dead kind of got so unfocused in its later seasons that it kind of lost a lot of its tension. So it's able to bring that back and do different stuff with it. I'm really enjoying Daryl Dixon. Beyond that, I've been watching the One Piece anime. Season 2 is gonna be nuts. Yeah. I'm coming up on an arc called Alabasta, which is a really famous arc in the anime and manga. And yeah, some of the stuff coming in season 2 is going to be crazy.
Woo!
I'm excited.
Should I watch the anime? Do you recommend that?
Yes, it is
Okay,
so
maybe I will.
fun. It's such a fun feel good show, and if you enjoyed the humor from the live action show, like the anime has it too. Like the anime has it so much. The humor is so perfect and wholesome. I would give it a chance. Like, what's the worst that could happen? They're like 20-minute episodes.
I've
They're
liked
so
an
easy
anime
to put
in my
on.
day or two. Sure.
Well,
I'm also I will also say I'm watching The Winter King, and I'm almost done.
How is that?
It's getting better towards the end. I thought the last episodes were the strongest they've had. I am concerned too little too late, because you really, if there was ever a show that could have justified the whole drop 3 episodes all at once at the top thing, it would have been this one. And instead they do it one at a time.
I see. Yeah.
And have they have week after week of slow, silly, wrong-headed episodes, and now it's finally getting a bit better. And I'm like, is anybody left? I don't know.
That's rough. It's nice that it's getting better. The Winter King has had an interesting run. Some of the things you pointed out, as someone who, you read those books when you were a lot younger and you know them really well. It seems like they've had a hard time kind of really finding their footing, but I hope they get a second season, right? They should do more seasons of it. No,
I'm not sure if they deserve that. I'm gonna see the last 2 episodes and then I'll decide.
Gotcha. Fair. Yeah, I haven't checked it out. I'm not really running to.
Oh yeah, don't. You're fine.
Yeah, I am kind of curious. That's on MGM Plus, right?
MGM Plus, the number 18 streaming service in the world. Yeah.
I am curious about. They have a show called Beacon 23 coming out. Next month with Lena Headey. Yeah, that's based on a book by Hugh Howey, who's the dude who wrote Silo.
He's popping off.
I'm curious, but yeah, he's getting that Plus streaming service hat trick almost. He's got.
Yeah, but Rothfuss can't get anybody to make King Killer.
He's got to finish King Killer. Hugh Howey finished the Wool series quite a while ago. But yeah, so those are coming up. I saw a comment that I wanted to hit and I have lost it. Oh, Andrew asked if the whole One Piece anime is on Netflix, to which I say that's cute. The whole One Piece anime is not done. It's still running. So they have a lot of it, but
since like 1999, six years before Andrew was born, I believe.
Yeah, they are well into the 1,000+ episode range of the anime, but there are a whole lot of them on Netflix, and you can enjoy it without needing all that. Like, I'm on around episode 60, 70 almost, and it's great.
You're not a 10th done.
I'm not a 10th done, and it's a blast, and I'm so glad I'm not a 10th done, because it's just like good, wholesome fun. The songs are really catchy. It's like hanging out with your friends on the Going Merry. Like, it's great. I hope Netflix does a whole lot of seasons of the live action show, because it's got so much potential. But yeah, the only other thing I wanted to mention, I did finish a book this week that's really good that I wanted to talk about, Generationship by Michael Mame. So this is a book about a generation ship that is going toward a planet they're looking to colonize. And it's got kind of like Game of Thrones Expanse vibes, with like all the different factions on the ship, like the scientists and there are politicians and farmers who are like organizing a strike. And it's like, as they get close to this planet, the political situation starts to pick up, where everyone wants different things before they get there.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it's a really, really cool book. I finished it this week. I'm going to be reviewing it soon. But yeah, definitely worth checking out.
Oh, I mentioned really fast. We're watching the 3rd season of For All Mankind, because the 4th season's coming out next month. That show is so good. It's so good. That show is so good. If any of you have Apple TV Plus, check out For All Mankind. Kind of a alternate American history where the space race with the Soviets never ended. Just really well put together. Just enough like hard science to make it sort of plausible, but still very focused on the characters and the history and the stories. Really, really good show that I don't hear talked about enough. Nothing will ever beat my precious, no one talked with us enough, Baby Warrior. But For All Mankind is is second in terms of the I will evangelize this show because it deserves more fans.
It is the Warrior comparison's a good one because just like Warrior, I don't hear a lot of people talk about For All Mankind, but I've never heard someone talk badly about it. Everyone who watches it seems to be like, this show is great. Why aren't more people watching it? So yeah, For All Mankind and Warrior's on Max, For All Mankind's on Apple TV Plus. Worth a watch if you need.
Warrior is on Max and also in my heart always.
Yes. Leo said, who saw that awesome FX Fargo trailer featuring John Hamm? Not me, but hey, that's nice.
I actually just watched it before we started this. It's coming on back. John Hamm was in it. John Hamm's everywhere.
Yeah.
Hamm.
I'm waiting for that Fargo creator Noah Hawley's Alien show. I'm probably not going to watch Fargo, but when the Alien show comes out, I'm going to be all over that.
Xenomorph.
Yes.
All right. Shall we get on to the WiC News Lightning Round where we go over stories we didn't have time to cover in the main body of the show and give our 20-second lightning fast opinions?
I think that would be prudent because this has been quite a show. Thanks for hanging with us, everyone.
Aren't they always?
They are always. Dan, why don't you kick us off on, is there a pet? There's either a pet or a fly.
Andrew said John Hamm's behind me. Just like
I'm glad you checked.
I should be so lucky. Okay. Well, that's
you read the first one.
Okay, Daniel. 20 seconds on the clock. The Fallout TV show that Amazon is making is coming out on Amazon Prime Video on April 12th of next year.
Yeah, the people who made Westworld are making a show based on the Fallout video games. Got a release date. Really excited for this. Fallout is one of those series that it's got such a great sense of humor. It would totally make a good show. I just hope it is done well because this one has a lot of potential to be a great video game adaptation, I think.
Cool. We'll see.
Yeah. Speaking of John Hamm related things, so Good Omens lost its co-showrunner. I assume not Neil Gaiman. I assume the other one. But season 3 is, quote, very likely.
Yeah, according to Deadline, Hollywood's Pulse. Good Omens is a good show. I like it. It has a very passionate fan base. And I hope, mostly, I hope for them that they get the third and final season. Neil Gaiman said it'll be the final season. I'll see how it wraps up. I've always liked this show. Nice British light sense of humor, lightly blasphemous. It's fun. So yeah, go on with the third season. Some light blasphemy. All right, here is one for the Daniel Romans in the audience. Daniel, Outlander composer Bear McCreary is scoring the new Percy Jackson and the Olympian show on Disney Plus. Daniel, do you like composer Bear McCreary?
I am rather fond of composer Bear McCreary. I think he does great work. He's getting almost a little overexposed for my taste because he's just everywhere now. So we know that Percy Jackson and the Olympians is going to have great music. I almost wish we'd get a little less of Bear McCreary just so I could appreciate it more when we do get him. This seems like a great pairing. I'm excited for it.
Bear McWorkaholic. Okay, hit me.
Yes. Okay, so Netflix released more first look images of actors in costume from its Avatar: The Last Airbender live action series. So we've got Daniel Day Kim as you talk about it.
Yeah,
the names are there if you want.
We have Daniel Day Kim as Philo Ozai, Paul Sun-hyung Lee as Uncle Iroh, Ken Leong as Commander Zhao, and Elizabeth Yu as Azula. I love this animated show, Nickelodeon. I'm looking forward to the live action thing. I mean, frankly, I'm a little more hopeful since One Piece did such a good job of turning an anime into a live action thing. I'm like, maybe they can pull it off again. Maybe this is a new era for Netflix. It's a great show. I hope the live action remake does it justice. And those pictures are pretty good. So I'm in. I think it's next year. I'm not sure if we have an exact release date. Daniel, Deadpool 3 director Sean Levy, speaking of somebody who's kind of been overexposed lately, dodges questions about whether Taylor Swift is in Deadpool 3 as Dazzler. Would you go see Deadpool 3 if Taylor Swift was in it?
I'm going to see Deadpool 3 no matter who's in it. It's going to be, those movies are so fun. It's going to be great. But I do think it's funny that there have been rumors she's playing a mutant named Dazzler. And Sean Levy was basically like, you want me to talk about a Marvel thing and a Taylor Swift secret thing? And that's two no-nos. So I'm just going to say no comment.
Too much, man.
That's too much. Sean Levy is seasoned. He knows how to play this game, people. All right. This is good news for the Boys fans out there. So Amazon has renewed the Boys spinoff, Gen V. It is getting season 2.
Yeah, I still haven't watched it, but I saw someone on a plane on their phone watching Gen V, and I'm like, that's a good sign. It must be catching on with people in general. If I just see a random stranger saying it, it looked good, and it was popular enough for it to be renewed. So maybe they have something going with this Boys cinematic universe. Let's hear it for the Boys. Okay. Daniel. Oh, look at this. So there's a fantasy author named Joe Abercrombie who writes a series of books known as the First Law books, the First Law universe. And his book, Best Served Cold, is getting adapted into a movie. And Abercrombie himself is involved in everything.
Yeah, so this is exciting. This broke today. The director of this movie, who did the first Deadpool, Tim Miller, talked about how he has been working with Joe Abercrombie for like 12 years to bring his books to the screen. And work is moving along really well on the Best Served Cold movie. Tim Miller hopes he'll be filming it very soon. He talks with Joe Abercrombie about it every day. And Abercrombie wrote the script. So I'm really hopeful for this one.
That's boss.
It is boss. All right. So DC veteran Jay Oliva is going to direct a new animated Wheel of Time prequel movie called The White Tower.
Okay, so in essence, that's cool news. But again, it is semi-alarming to see how quickly all these series jump from one good show to cinematic universe. They can't have time. They have to have like a prequel movie. They can't have The Boys. They have to have Gen V. They can't have House of Dragon. They got to have Night of Seven Kingdoms. Like everything's got spinoffs. And I get it. And you know what? They seem to be finding more ways to make them good. I feel like that there is like more success. I hope it's cool. Of course, I hope it's cool. And I made a prequel the Wheel Time movie, which is good. Well, Daniel, everybody out there, this has been a fun show as always. It's never not fun on this show, except that one time. I won't say when. So thanks for joining us. We're here every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, 3 p.m. on the East Coast, 1 in the mountains, and noon on the West Coast to talk about all things sci-fi, fantasy, movies and TV. Join us every week live. Also, we're available on podcasts where podcasts are available. Give us a like, give us a subscribe, give us a comment. I know you guys are good at that. We always like talking with you. And before we sign off, I want to say again that everything in this podcast we said about certain individuals was speculative based on our own opinion and not legally actionable. Nice. Respectfully yours, Dan's.
Take care, all.